All right, folks, welcome back. We're going to continue our talk with ExtraordinaryMovie.com. We're talking about Extraordinary, the latest faith-based inspired film. It is about family and marriage, centering around the true story of Dr. David Horton and his wife Nancy out of Liberty University. It is a very good film. It really deals with a lot of interesting challenges, and I want to talk to the creator behind this, Scotty Curley, and we'll get to some of those different questions the film raises and that kind of thing. How you doing, Scotty?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Let's get right to the film itself, because I think there's really the film kind of sits on one big pivot point question for me, and I think it is the crux of the film, and that is there's a scene where David, who's later in his life, his body's breaking down. He's this crazy ultra marathon runner, which, by the way, I didn't know they really still did. By the way, I kind of like laughed off the Forrest Gump line, because I'm like, yeah, I watched that movie and that scene, and kind of like, yeah, whatever. People don't really do that. And I realized, holy cow, people actually do this? That's crazy.
Yeah.
He says, I feel called. I feel God calling me to do this. I've been getting confirmation after confirmation. And his wife's like, no, you're crazy. This is in your mind. Are you sure this isn't what you want to do? This isn't you. That really is a pivot, not only for this film, but most of us as Christians in our walk, what we feel like we're called to do, and then the challenges that presses on a spouse or a different loved one or a friend or someone else around us. So talk to that a little bit, and then how your experience of the real life David Horton brings that to life.
Yeah. So I think we're all given gifts. It's different gifts. For some people, it's music. They sit in front of a piano and it just makes sense. For other people, it's math. For Dave Horton, he covers long distances, and his body is able to handle that. He ran 64 consecutive days, almost 50 miles a day on this run across America. And that's been his gift. And during his tenure as a professor at Liberty University, 38-year educator, he teaches the running class. He's inspired thousands and thousands of students at Liberty. I was one of those students that he inspired at Liberty University. And so, that gift is the way he ministers to people. But in that process, he really began to learn that he had too much of his identity in running. And really, his identity need to be grounded in Christ. So I think we can take a good thing that God has given us, and if we're not careful, it can kind of take over our lives. And in this case, that's what happened with Dave. But in real life, I mean, Dave is, I don't want to give away too much of the movie, but in the beginning of the movie, there's a character by the name of Clark that comes and says, Dave, I can't afford to go to college anymore. I got to drop out. And Dave gives him a $1,000 check to continue his education. In reality, that check came to me. I just didn't want to inject that part of the story into the movie, being the filmmaker. But Dave has inspired so many of us in so many ways, not only challenging us academically, but through the craft of running, which he's been gifted at. And but the bottom line is family. It's about the relationship. And that's really where his focus is right now as he's getting older in life. He's come to the realization that, wow, really what's important is my family and God, the relationship with Christ. That's where my identity needs to be rooted.
Well, it's great to see his story being told. I think that it is great to be a filmmaker in this era where faith-based films can join Hollywood and not be left on the sidelines to tell some of these great stories and great biographies and bring them to life. And of course, Nancy is such a vital part of not only David's life, but of the story itself, as far as her development and growth and what the story. She feels like she's already on the edge of the cliff. This is going to be the push that's going to push her over that cliff. Yeah. Is that the driver for you, Scotty, to try to find enough time in the story to try to make sure you kind of reveal her growth as well?
We originally, when we tackled the story, we thought it was about an ultramarathon legend who inspires his students. As we peeled back the layers of the story, we realized that, wow, this story is actually about the marriage. It's about the relationship. And one of the things the real Nancy Horton made me promise, Dave just said, hey, make a good movie. That was his creed. Nancy said, Scotty, I will allow you to do this, but I want you to be honest in how difficult it was for me and what we went through in hopes that it would encourage other couples, other marriages in their journey. And we just did a screening during Winterfest, which was in December. And two women came up and talked about how this movie administered to them. One was just in tears, going through a very difficult time in their marriage. Her husband had just quit drinking, 3 months ago, and they were just in the middle of it, in the thick of things. And she said, this movie really encouraged me and spoke to me and spoke to my heart. And that's really what we were after. And Nancy's journey of how she stuck through the ups and downs, the challenges, the absences from home. I mean, this story is about the extraordinary woman that Nancy is. That's the reveal in the end.
Scotty Curley's talking to us about his latest film. It's called Extraordinary. It arrives on DVD, digital, and demand today. We're recording on January 16th through Universal, so make sure you check that out. And Scotty, you pulled together just a great cast. I mean, who did you land first to help make sure you got all these feelers lined up to make this work, right? We just did an interview with Sherry Rigby. Obviously, This is now Leland's kind of known for being more of a comedian, but to tap into a dramatic performance like that, how was it to work with him on that?
It was such a blessing. We needed somebody very unique, very special to play Dave Horton. Not only did we need somebody who could have the dramatic chops, but be able to pull off a lifetime of running. And Leland dove into it, and he normally was not a runner, but he dove into the character, started running, doing trail running, and we traveled across the United States with Leland. I remember they shut down the Hoover Dam for us for 3 hours.
Wow.
And Leland did this one section of Hoover Dam over and over and over and over without complaint. And at one point we were doing this scene, and he was running alongside of my Xterra. We had a camera sticking out the back of it, and he had to run by. So I said, Leland, go now. And he was trying. He's like, man, I'm trying. He's just exhausted. But man, he gave us 100%. And he just, not only is he a talented actor, but his just heart to work hard and get what we need to get on screen was completely evident.
We could probably have similar conversations about working with Kirk Cameron, Karen Abercrombie, who were just fantastic in the film. Yeah. I gotta bring a little credit to one of the other characters. Talk about the Russian character a little bit, because gotta be honest, kind of stole the movie in a lot of ways.
Yeah. Chris Ashworth is actually a veteran actor. He was in Terminator Salvation. He's been on some of HBO TV shows. He's actually a close personal friend. And when I thought of the role of Sergei, I really had Chris in mind, because he's played some Russian characters on TV before. And so when we reached out, Chris being a Hollywood talent, he was looking for something to do that would be a part of his legacy work, meaning leaving something behind in with a message that he could be proud of, that he could see with his family. And this was the perfect fit. So it was a joy. He actually traveled with us across America too. So it was he and Leland running by these incredible landmarks.
How much of, again, we don't want to spoil the ending, but how much of the ending, there's a little phrase, a little interaction between Sergei and David, how much of that is true?
Yeah. So, in reality, the real character, the Russian, his name was Danan. We actually changed his name and character attributes a little bit. So, what we found interesting was in ultramarathoning, although it's competitive and it's super competitive, there's also a super camaraderie, and so there's this banter back and forth, there's this encouragement back and forth, and they had that sort of banter and encouragement throughout the entire Trans Am race. And so we just tried to capture the essence of that to be a part of the story, which I think we did pretty well, because it seems like every screening people come out of, they mention Sergei's character and how much they loved him.
No, Chris did a great job. Just nothing I could say there. I just let him know. I'm a hard critic, and my movie reviews are always a little harsh, but I have to be honest. Yeah, Chris was fantastic. He did a great job. So Scott, as you put this together, you talked about your impact at Liberty, coming forth as a filmmaker. Now you worked as a producer as well to help make this happen. So what was in the back of your mind as you're telling the story? You understand the marriage part of it now. You understand how to approach Nancy. How do you sort of also kind of keep it grounded enough to stay entertaining for a larger audience, right? We got to be able to walk into a theater that doesn't have believers in it, still have something tangible that they will, oh wow, this is actually some. What are they talking about? What is this true? And then when they dive into David's life, and you go down the rabbit hole. So how do you keep that in the back of your mind and stay focused on that as well?
Yeah. I remember an interview that Mel Gibson and Randall Wallace did at a church, and while they were screening the movie Hacksaw Ridge, and somebody had asked them, why is it you guys always focus on war movies? And Randall's answers was, it's not that we focus on war movies. We focus on love stories. It just so happens that there's this backdrop of war. And so, for us with Extraordinary, this movie is about love. It's about family. It's about a relationship. It's really a love story between David and Nancy. It's just the backdrop is this incredible race across the United States of America. And so for me to be a part of this story, I mean, you get to tell somebody's life story one time, and there was a tremendous amount of respect and a tremendous amount of, a fear, so to speak, that, man, I wanted to do this right. I wanted to honor Dave because he's been my friend and my professor for 26 years. And so that's what came into this story. And I'm actually quite pleased with it. I don't think a movie is ever completed. It's more abandoned. At some point, you got to say, hey, we're done with this film. But at the same time, I think the emails we get, the phone calls we get from the screenings tell us that it's really impacting people, which is what it's all about.
Extraordinary, folks. We'll make sure you have all the links to everything. You can get your copy and more information at extraordinarymovie.com, as well as we'll link to the Facebook, Twitter, those kinds of things. Scotty, what's next for you? What do you got in the hopper now that we can look forward to?
Okay, 2 movies. One is called An Unfair Advantage. It's based upon the book of the same name about Special Operator Chad Robichaux. He did 8 deployments in Afghanistan, top secret work, working with a Tier 1 U.S. Forces team. And again, when you dig down to the details of that story, it's a love story between he and his wife and him trying to get back home and reconnect. And then another movie called Living the Dream. It's about 2-time Olympic gold medalist and head softball coach at Liberty University, Dot Richardson. So those are what we have in the immediate, and we're just super excited to be a part of those projects.
It's been great to talk with Scotty, and folks, check it out, Extraordinary, extraordinarymovie.com. We'll link to my review as well as the interview with Sherry. Make sure you can kind of see all 3 facets of what we've done here. It is a good time. Really sit down. Very encouraging and challenging as far as family and marriage and balancing your call and what that burden is on your heart, and then, of course, how that can impact your family. Good stuff. So, Scotty, thanks again for fitting us in.
Thank you. I'm going to let Chris know what your thoughts were. He'll love it. Thanks so much.